The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was not built for humans. It was built to make you feel small. The ceiling was so high that clouds could form inside it. The walls were made of black stone that absorbed light. The floor was cold and smooth like frozen water. And the council members, 12 aliens from 12 different worlds, they sat on high thrones that looked down at everyone below. That was the point. They wanted you to feel small. They wanted you to know your place before you even opened your mouth. On this particular morning, hundreds of beings lined up outside the Great Hall, all of them waiting for one thing: a chance to be accepted into the Galactic Alliance. The Alliance was everything. If your species was accepted, you got access to alien medicine, alien technology, alien trade routes, protection from space threats, a seat at the table of the most powerful organization in the known galaxy. If you were rejected, you were on your own forever. The line moved slowly. One by one, beings walked in, and one by one the council looked at them, scanned them, measured them, and made their decision in minutes. Most were accepted without much trouble. The tall blue warriors of Keth, accepted. The six-armed engineers of Drova, accepted. The telepathic scholars of Mine, accepted immediately. Then the humans came. There were 11 of them in the line. Soldiers, scientists, diplomats, all of them in their best uniforms, all of them standing straight and trying to look impressive. The council looked at them with tired eyes. Humans were not impressive to the council. Humans were small. Humans were slow. Humans had no special abilities, no telepathy, no natural armor, no venom, no extraordinary strength, no ability to survive in space. The council leader, Vorn, looked at the human files with visible boredom. Vorn was tall and gray. His face had no expression. His eyes were yellow and flat, like an old coin. He approved the humans with a wave of his hand, not because he was impressed, but because humans were just barely acceptable, just enough to be useful, not enough to be respected. One by one the humans walked out, relieved, grateful, shaking each other's hands. And then, the last one walked in. Her name was Mara. She was 26 years old. She was thin, very thin. Her arms looked like they could break in a strong wind. She walked with a very slight limp. Her left hand trembled as she held her application file. She had a condition called Velen syndrome. It was a rare disease. It made her bones weaker than normal. It made her joints ache every single day. It made her tire quickly, and it meant she would never be a soldier, never be an athlete, never be anything the galaxy considered strong. But Mara had not come to be a soldier. She had a mind that worked like no one else's. She could look at a broken machine and understand it in minutes. She could solve problems that took teams of engineers weeks. She had fixed 3 major power grid failures in her city before she turned 20. She had designed a water filtration system at age 17 that still worked perfectly today. But none of that was in the part of the file the council would read first. The first thing they saw was her medical report. Mara stood in the center of the Great Hall. The cold light above her made her look even smaller. She looked up at the 12 council members on their high thrones. She did not look away. Vorn picked up her file. He looked at it. His yellow eyes moved across the page. Then he stopped. He looked at her, then at the file, then at her again. He put the file down slowly. Velen syndrome, he said. His voice was flat, like reading a shopping list. Yes, Mara said. But if you look at page 3, your bone density is 40% below human average, Vorn said. He was not listening to her. He was reading out loud to the room. Your endurance scores are in the lowest 5% of your species. Your physical strength assessment was not even completed, because your doctors said it would cause injury. The hall was completely silent. Some of the alien council members leaned forward to look at her, not with curiosity, with something closer to disgust. We already accepted humans today, Vorn continued. Standard approval, borderline acceptable. Your species contributes minimally, but enough. However, he looked directly at her. You are not the standard human. You are below your own species' low standard. You are fragile, you are limited, you would be a burden, not a contribution. Mara's jaw tightened. I am an engineer, she said. Her voice was quiet but steady. If you look at page 3 of my file, there is a full record of my work. I designed systems that we have engineers, Vorn said simply. Better ones, faster ones who do not require constant medical attention. He picked up her file and dropped it. It fell from the high throne, papers scattering across the cold floor below. Some of the other council members made sounds. Low sounds, almost like laughter. One alien, a large purple creature on the far left, shook his head slowly, as if she was a sad thing to look at. Another whispered something to the one next to him. They both looked at Mara and looked away. Rejected, Vorn said. And he was already looking at the next thing on his desk. Mara stood there for a moment. The word fell on her like something heavy. Rejected. She had prepared for this moment for 2 years. She had studied the council, the process, the requirements. She had written and rewritten her application 12 times. She had traveled for 6 weeks just to stand in this hall, and it was over in 4 minutes. She looked at her scattered papers on the floor. Then she bent down, slowly, because bending quickly hurt her joints. She picked up every single page one by one. She straightened them carefully. She put them back in order. She tapped the stack neatly on the floor to align the edges. Nobody helped her. Nobody spoke. She stood back up. She held the file against her chest and she walked out. She did not run. She did not cry. She did not say anything. She just walked. Outside the great hall, she sat on the steps. The air was cold. The plaza was busy with beings coming and going. Nobody looked at her. She looked down at her file in her hands, her trembling left hand, her weak, useless, broken hand that had just rebuilt a thermal regulator last week with 0 spare parts. She closed her eyes. She heard footsteps on the stone steps. Then someone sat beside her. She did not look up. I watched what happened in there, said a voice. It was a man's voice, calm, like someone who was never in a hurry. Mara did not respond. They didn't read page 3, the voice said. That made her look up. The man sitting next to her was ordinary looking, medium height, plain gray uniform, no rank badge, no medals, no insignia, brown eyes that were watching her with calm attention. No, she said. They didn't. I did, he said. She looked at him. The thermal grid repair in New Ankara, he said. 6 hours. No tools except what you found on site. 40,000 people kept their heat that winter because of you. And you were 22 years old. Mara stared at him. Who are you? She asked. He reached into his pocket and took out a small black card. He held it out to her. She took it. There were no words on it, just a symbol, a closed fist inside a circle. My name is Cole, he said. I run a unit. We are not part of the council. We are not on any official list. We solve problems that the council does not know how to solve, or problems they do not even know exist yet. Mara turned the card over in her hand. What kind of problems? She asked. Cole looked out at the plaza, at the tall aliens walking past, the strong ones, the fast ones, the powerful ones. The kind that strength cannot fix, he said quietly. Mara was quiet for a moment. I have Velen syndrome, she said. I cannot run, I cannot fight. Some days I cannot carry a bag without pain. The council just told me I am useless. Cole turned and looked at her directly. Mara, he said, I watched you pick up every single page off that floor, slowly, carefully, in front of everyone who was laughing at you. You put them in order. You stood up straight, and you walked out with your head up. He paused. That is not what a useless person does. That is what someone does when they have decided, no matter what happens, they will not be broken. He stood up from the steps. I don't want a soldier, he said. I don't want someone who can lift heavy things. I want someone who sees a problem and refuses to stop until it is solved. He looked at her one last time. Come if you want. There is a transport leaving from Bay 17 in 2 hours. He walked away across the plaza. Mara sat on the cold steps. She looked at the black card in her hand, then at the great hall behind her, where Vorn and the council had already forgotten she existed, then at the card again. Her left hand had stopped trembling. She stood up, and she walked toward Bay 17. Bay 17 was not easy to find. There were no signs pointing to it, no announcements on the speaker system, no helpful maps on the wall. Most of the transport bays had bright lights and busy crowds, people rushing, luggage moving, voices everywhere. Bay 17 was at the end of a long gray corridor, away from everything, away from everyone. Mara walked slowly down that corridor. Her joints ached from the long day. Her left hand was trembling again. The black card with the fist symbol was in her right hand. She almost turned back twice. The first time, she stopped walking and stood still. She told herself this was a mistake. She told herself she did not even know who Cole was. She told herself a man with no rank badge and no name, sitting outside a council building, was probably not someone she should follow. She stood there for almost a full minute. Then she thought about Vorn's face, flat yellow eyes, bored voice reading her medical file out loud, the sound of her papers hitting the cold floor. She kept walking. The second time she almost turned back. She reached a locked door at the end of the corridor. No handle, no button, no keypad, just a flat gray door with a small slot on the side. She looked at the black card. She looked at the slot. She put the card in. The door opened. Inside was a room the size of a large warehouse, but it did not look like a warehouse. It looked like something between a laboratory and a training ground. On one side, long rows of workbenches covered in machines. Some of the machines were in pieces. Some were half-built. Some were running and making soft humming sounds. On the other side, open floor space, people moving, working, carrying things, and all of them were human. Mara stopped just inside the door and looked around. There were maybe 40 people in the room, men and women, different ages, some young, some older, all in the same plain gray uniforms Cole had been wearing. None of them looked like soldiers. None of them had the chest of a warrior or the stance of a fighter. They looked like people. Just regular, ordinary people. But the things they were doing were not ordinary. Mara watched a woman in the far corner. She was sitting in front of a machine covered in wires and panels. She had a blindfold over her eyes, and she was fixing it, with her hands moving by memory alone, fast and accurate, like she had done it 1,000 times. Mara watched a man near the center of the room. He was sitting inside a large metal pod. The pod was making a loud, uncomfortable sound, like pressure building. The man inside was doing calculations on a screen. His face was tight with effort, his knuckles white, but his hands were not shaking. He was not stopping. She watched two young people at a workbench. They were rebuilding something from a pile of broken parts. No instruction sheet, no diagram, just pieces in their own minds. They were arguing quietly about the right approach, and they were both smiling while they argued. "You found it." Cole's voice came from behind her. She turned. He was walking toward her from across the room. Same plain uniform, same calm face. "What is this place?" Mara asked. Cole stood beside her and looked around the room. "This," he said, "is what humans actually are. When nobody is watching, when nobody is testing us for strength or speed, when nobody is measuring our bones." Mara looked at the woman with the blindfold. "What is she doing?" she asked. "Training," Cole said. "She lost her vision in an accident 3 years ago. Now she can fix a Class 7 engine in the dark, faster than most engineers can fix one with full light and all their tools." Mara was quiet. "The man in the pod?" she asked. "Pressure simulation," Cole said. "The pod puts his body under stress, heat, noise, physical discomfort. We are seeing how long his mind stays sharp while his body suffers. Current record is 6 hours and 40 minutes. He is trying to beat it." Mara turned to look at Cole. "Why?" she asked. "Why are you training people like this?" Cole turned and started walking slowly across the room. He gestured for her to follow. "Because the council is wrong about us," he said. "They look at humans and they see a species without gifts, no natural weapons, no enhanced senses, no special biology. and they decide we are weak. They accept us because we are just barely useful. Not because they respect us, not because they understand us. He stopped at one of the workbenches. On the bench was a cracked alien device. It had a symbol on the side. The mark of the Keth warriors, the tall blue species that the council had accepted with great enthusiasm that same morning. This device, Cole said, belonged to a Keth engineering team. They tried to fix it for 11 days, gave up and called it permanently broken, sent it here as scrap. He looked at Mara. One of my people fixed it in a night, alone, with tools she made from other scrap pieces. Mara looked at the device. It looked fully operational. Why does the council not know about this unit? She asked. Cole was quiet for a moment. He pulled out a chair at the workbench and sat down. Because if the council knew, he said slowly, they would try to control it. They would put us in boxes, give us ranks and rules and limits. They would decide which problems we were allowed to solve and which ones were above our level. He shook his head. We don't work that way. My people work without a ceiling. No problem is above their level. No situation is too complicated. No mission is impossible. It is just unsolved. Mara sat down across from him. And you want me? She said. It was not quite a question, not quite a statement. More like she was trying to understand something that did not quite fit yet. You read page 3 of my file, she said. Before today, before the council, how did you have my file? Cole looked at her without surprise, as if he had expected the question. I have files on a lot of people, he said. People the council overlooks, people who don't fit the standard measurements, people who solve problems in ways that don't show up on a test. You were watching the applications, Mara said. I watch every application session, Cole said. The council rejects some very interesting people, people who don't look impressive on the outside, but whose minds, he paused, whose minds are something else entirely. Mara looked down at her hands on the workbench. Her left one trembled slightly. She put her right hand over it. I have limits, she said. Real limits, not just numbers on a file. There are days I wake up and my hands hurt so much I cannot hold a cup without dropping it. There are days walking from one room to another takes everything I have. I am not going to pretend otherwise. I know, Cole said. Then why me? She asked. Her voice was quiet, but steady. There are plenty of healthy humans with good minds. Why come to the steps for someone like me? Cole leaned forward slightly. Because of what you did on that floor, he said. Mara looked up. Anyone can be strong when things are going well, Cole said. Anyone can work hard when they feel good and the conditions are right. That is not interesting to me. What is interesting, what is actually rare, is someone who is already in pain, already exhausted, already humiliated and still. He stopped. Still picks up the papers, Mara said quietly. Still picks up the papers, Cole repeated. The room was busy around them, people working, machines humming. But at that workbench, it was quiet. Mara looked around the room again, at the woman who could fix engines blind, at the man pushing through 6 hours of pain, at the 2 young engineers arguing and smiling over their broken parts. She thought about her city back home, the power grid failure, the cold winter night, 40,000 people, and a 22-year-old girl with aching hands and no proper tools, who looked at the broken system and thought, I can fix this, not, I hope someone fixes this, not, someone stronger should handle this, I can fix this. She looked at Cole. What would I be doing? She asked. Cole stood up from the workbench. First, you learn, he said. You work alongside the others. You find out what you are capable of beyond what you already know. We will push you, not physically, but mentally. Yes, you will be given problems that seem impossible. You will be put in situations where the pressure is enormous. You will have moments where your mind says it cannot continue. He looked at her calmly. And then you will continue anyway, because that is what we do here. Mara stood up from the chair. It took her a second. Her knees were stiff. She straightened slowly. "And after the learning?" she asked. Cole picked up the repaired Keth device from the workbench. He turned it over in his hands once, then set it back down. "After the learning," he said, "we go to work. Real work. The kind the council sends their best people to handle. And those best people come back saying it cannot be done." He looked at her with steady brown eyes. "And then we go and do it." Mara stood in the middle of that warehouse, surrounded by 40 ordinary-looking humans, doing extraordinary things. Her hand was trembling, her joints were aching. She was tired from the longest day she had had in months, and she had never felt more awake in her life. "When do I start?" she asked. Cole almost smiled. "You already did," he said. 6 months is not a long time. For most people, 6 months is just time passing. Seasons changing, days becoming nights. Nothing really different at the end of it. But for Mara, 6 months was everything. She woke up every morning at 5. Before the sun came up, before anyone else in the facility was moving. She sat at her workbench in the dark, and she worked. She worked on problems Cole gave her. Old broken devices that alien engineers had abandoned. Complex system failures that entire teams had given up on. Calculations that required holding 20 things in your mind at once. Some nights she did not sleep at all. Not because anyone made her stay awake, but because her mind would not stop. Because the problem was right there, almost solved. And walking away from an almost solved problem was something Mara could not do. The others in the facility noticed her. The blind engineer, her name was Sarah. She started leaving problems on Mara's bench in the morning. Not to test her, not as an assignment, just because she was curious what Mara would do with them. Mara always solved them. Sometimes the same way Sarah expected. Sometimes in a way Sarah had never thought of. The man from the pressure pod. His name was Dax. He started timing Mara when she worked. Not her speed, not her physical performance, but how long she could focus. How long her mind stayed sharp and precise while her body ached and her hands trembled. He stopped timing after the 3rd week, because Mara never stopped. 6 months after the day Vorn dropped her file on the floor. Everything changed. It started with a signal, not a normal signal. Not a message or a call, a distress signal. The kind that only gets sent when everything else has already failed. It came from a planet called Yeth 4, a mid-sized world in the outer ring of the galaxy. Home to 3 million people from 4 different species, and also home to something much more important. Deep underground, buried beneath 2 kilometers of rock and metal, was a machine called the Core Stabilizer. The Core Stabilizer had been built 400 years ago. By a species that no longer existed, it kept the planet's underground energy systems in balance. Without it, the planet's core would become unstable, and an unstable core meant earthquakes that would not stop. Floods, fires, collapse, not just for Yethafu. The energy disruption would spread, like a crack in glass moving outward in all directions. 3 neighboring star systems were connected to Yethafu's energy grid. If the core stabilizer failed completely, the damage would be unthinkable. The machine was failing. It had been failing slowly for 2 years, but in the last week it had dropped to 12% function, and it was dropping fast. The Galactic Council had sent their best engineers first, 12 of them, top of their fields. They had studied the machine through sensors and scanners for 4 days. Then they reported back to the Council. They could not fix it. The machine was too old. The design was unlike anything in current galactic knowledge. The parts that were failing were deep inside the structure, in sections that no scanner could fully read, and the access tunnels. That was the real problem. The tunnels that led to the core of the machine were built for the species that made it. A small, narrow species that had moved through tight spaces naturally. The tunnels were less than 60 centimeters wide, and they went deep, hundreds of meters, twisting, turning. No light, no room to move properly. Not one of the alien engineers could fit inside. Not the Keth warriors. Too wide. Not the Drova engineers. Too many arms. Not the mine scholars. Their heads too large. The Council sent soldiers next, thinking maybe the machine just needed to be forced into submission. The soldiers looked at the tunnels and shook their heads. Nobody was getting in there. The Council was running out of options, and the core stabilizer was at 9%. That was when Vorn came to Cole. Mara was at her workbench when it happened. She heard voices near the entrance of the facility. She looked up and saw Cole standing with a tall gray figure. Her hands went still. She recognized those flat yellow eyes from across the room. Vorn stood inside Cole's facility with the expression of someone who had eaten something that tasted wrong. He looked around at the plain walls, the ordinary people, the simple equipment, and he said nothing about any of it, because he needed something. Cole listened to everything Vorn said without interrupting. Then he was quiet for a moment. "I will send a team," Cole said, "but I choose who goes." Vorn nodded quickly. He was not in a position to argue. Cole turned and looked across the room. His eyes moved slowly, past Sarah, past Dax, past the others. And then his eyes stopped, on Mara. The transport to Yethva 4 took 14 hours. Mara spent most of it reading everything she could find about the core stabilizer, which was not much, because the species that built it had left almost no records. She read about the tunnels instead, studied the sensor maps, looked at the angles, the turns, the depths. She pulled up her own measurements quietly, her shoulder width, the narrowest point of the tunnels. She did the numbers in her head. She could fit. Barely, but she could fit. She did not tell anyone this yet. She just kept reading. Yeth 4 was dark when they landed. The planet had started shutting down non-essential power to slow the damage. Half the city lights were off. The streets were quiet in the way streets get quiet. When people are scared and staying inside, Cole's team was met by the alien engineering crew, who looked at the humans with expressions that were not welcoming. And then Vorn walked down the steps of the alien transport, and he saw Mara. He stopped. "Why is she here?" he said. His voice was the same as it had been 6 months ago, cold, flat, dismissive. Cole kept walking and did not turn around. "She is part of my team," Cole said simply. "She can barely walk properly," Vorn said, still looking at Mara. "She will slow everything down. This is not the time for—" "She is part of my team," Cole said again. Same words, same calm voice. End of conversation. Vorn said nothing more, but his yellow eyes followed Mara as the group moved forward. The entrance to the core stabilizer was at the bottom of a deep shaft. They took a platform down into the rock. The temperature rose as they descended. The walls grew closer at the bottom. The machine, even half broken and barely functioning, it was enormous. A structure of ancient metal and crystal and components that nobody fully understood anymore. It filled a cavern the size of a city block, humming lowly, like something in pain. The alien engineers pointed to the access tunnels, small dark openings in the base of the machine, barely visible. One of the Keth engineers tried to push his arm into the nearest tunnel. His shoulder stopped him immediately. "We tried everything," the engineer said. "Remote tools. The tunnels are too long and they lose signal, small robots. The magnetic interference from the machine stops them. There is no other way in. The core components that are failing are at the end of those tunnels and nobody can reach them." The room was silent. Cole looked at Mara. Mara was already looking at the tunnels. She walked forward slowly. She crouched down in front of the nearest opening. She looked inside. Dark, narrow, a slight downward angle. The metal walls were hot to the touch. She looked at her toolkit, a small bag she had packed herself on the transport. Specific tools, specific sizes. She had packed it after she did the numbers. She looked at Cole. He said nothing. He just waited. "I can fit," she said. The alien engineers looked at each other. Vorn stood very still. "You cannot go in there alone," one of the engineers said. "We do not even know exactly what is failing. You would be going in blind if something collapses inside." "I read everything available about this machine," Mara said. "I know what the sensor maps show. I have a theory about which components are failing and why. I will know more once I'm inside." She paused. "And I work better alone anyway." She picked up her tool bag. She got down on her hands and knees. She looked into the dark tunnel one more time. Then she went in. The first thing that hit her was the heat. The metal walls of the tunnel were hot on both sides. The air was thick and difficult to breathe. There was no light except the small beam on her head. She moved slowly, her elbows pulling her forward, her knees pushing, her tool bag dragging behind her on a short cord. After the first turn, she could no longer see the entrance. It was just her and the tunnel and the dark, and the low, painful hum of the machine all around her. Her hands were burning from the hot metal. She kept moving. After 20 minutes, she found the first failing component, exactly where she thought it would be, a crystal regulator, cracked down the center, leaking energy in the wrong direction, like a pipe with a hole, sending water everywhere except where it should go. She opened her tool bag. She worked outside. The alien engineers stood in silence. Cole stood apart from them, arms crossed, eyes on the tunnel entrance. Vorn stood very still near the back. Nobody spoke. Time passed. 1 hour, 2 hours, 3. One of the alien engineers whispered to another. Something about whether she was still alive. Cole did not respond to that. At 4 hours, one of the alien sensors beeped. The engineer reading it looked up with wide eyes. "The stabilizer is responding," he said slowly, as if he did not quite believe the words he was saying. "The core output it is rising. It is at 30% and climbing." Nobody said anything. 40%, 50, 60. The hum of the machine changed, from the low, painful sound of something struggling, to a deeper, steadier, stronger sound, the sound of something that was working. 70%, 80. Then, Mara's voice came through the small radio at Cole's side. Quiet, calm, steady. "It is done." When Mara crawled out of that tunnel, nobody clapped, nobody cheered, nobody ran forward to help her. They just stared. Her uniform was black with dirt and burn marks. Her hands were red and blistered from the hot metal walls. Her face was covered in sweat and dust. Her left hand, the one that always trembled, was shaking more than usual now. She sat on the ground for a moment, just breathing. The alien engineers stood in a half circle around her, looking down at this small, thin, broken-looking human who had just done what none of them could do. The machine behind her hummed steadily now, deep and strong and stable, like a giant heart that had found its rhythm again. The sensor screen showed 94% function, still climbing. Nobody spoke for a long time. Then Cole crouched down beside her. He did not say, "Well done," or "I knew you could do it." He just handed her a bottle of water. She took it. She drank slowly. Then she looked up at the alien engineers still staring at her. "The third component from the left in Tunnel 4, she said quietly. "It will need attention again in about 8 months. I have written notes." She reached into her tool bag with burned fingers and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "Everything is here." She held it out. Nobody moved to take it for a moment. Then one of the alien engineers stepped forward, slowly, and took the paper from her burned hand. He looked at it, then at her. He did not say anything, but something in his face changed. Vorn did not speak on the transport back. He sat at the far end of the cabin, away from Cole's team, away from Mara. But 3 times during that long journey, Mara looked up from her seat and caught him watching her, not with the flat, bored eyes from 6 months ago, not with dismissal or disgust, with something else, something that looked almost like a man trying to solve a problem he had not expected. 2 weeks after Yeth 4, the council called a full assembly. This was not unusual. The council held assemblies regularly, but this one was different. Every seat was filled. Every species sent their representatives. Word had spread fast about what happened on Yeth 4, about the machine that nobody could fix, about the tunnel that nobody could enter, about the human girl. The great hall was noisier than normal. Voices in 20 different languages, all asking the same basic question. What exactly happened down there? When the hall finally went quiet, Vorn stood at the front. He looked different somehow, not older exactly, but heavier, like a man carrying something he had not been carrying before. He stood at the podium and looked out at the full hall, and he spoke. 3 weeks ago, he began. His voice was steady and formal as always. Yet the V sent a critical distress signal. The core stabilizer, a machine protecting 3 star systems, was failing. We sent our best engineers. They could not fix it. We sent soldiers. They could not help. We were out of options. The hall was completely silent. A human unit was contacted, Vorn continued. They agreed to assist. One member of that unit entered the access tunnels alone, tunnels that no other species in this hall could fit inside, and she repaired the machine, in 4 hours, alone. With tools she packed herself, based on a theory she built from incomplete data, on a machine nobody fully understands. He paused. Her name is Mara, 6 months ago. He stopped for just a moment. 6 months ago, she stood in this hall, and I rejected her application to the Alliance. I called her fragile. I called her a burden. I dropped her file on the floor. Not one sound in the entire hall. I was wrong, Vorn said. Those 3 words, from Vorn, fell on the room like stones in still water, because everyone there knew what it cost him to say them. Vorn did not say he was wrong. Vorn had never said he was wrong. Not once in 30 years on the council. He looked down at his podium for a moment, then back up. I was wrong about her, and I have been wrong about her species, and this assembly needs to understand why. He pressed a button on the podium. The lights in the hall dimmed. A large screen appeared at the front, and there was footage from Yeth 4, Mara going into the tunnel, just the top of her head and her shoulders disappearing into the dark opening. The hall watched. Then the sensor data appeared on screen. The percentage readings climbing. 30, 50, 70, 90. Then her voice on the radio, quiet and calm. It is done. The screen went dark. Vorn stepped back from the podium, and then Cole walked forward. Nobody had announced him. Nobody had given him permission to approach the podium. He just walked forward from the back of the hall, in his plain gray uniform with no rank badge and no medals, and everyone watched him walk, because something about the way Cole moved made you want to watch. He was not tall, he was not large, he carried no weapon, he wore no armor. He just walked like a man who had somewhere important to be, and was not in any hurry to get there. He stood at the podium. He looked out at the full hall. Every species, every council member, every representative, all looking back at him. He was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke. You have watched us for a long time, he said. You have measured us, tested us, compared us to yourselves and found us lacking. We are not the strongest species in this hall. We are not the fastest. We do not have your natural weapons, or your enhanced senses, or your centuries of galactic history. He let that sit for a second. But I want to tell you something about humans. Something your measurements have never captured and your tests have never found. Because it is not the kind of thing you can measure with the tools you use. He reached into his pocket and placed something small on the podium. A folded piece of paper. Mara's notes from the tunnel. Every species in this hall, Cole said, has a point where they stop. A point where the problem is too hard. The pain is too much, the odds are too bad. And they make the reasonable decision to step back, to accept that some things cannot be done, that some problems are too big, that some tunnels are too dark and too narrow and too hot for anyone to go inside. He looked around the room slowly. Humans do not have that point. A murmur moved through the hall. It is not bravery, Cole continued. Bravery is feeling afraid and choosing to go forward anyway. What I am describing is different. It is something closer to an inability to accept defeat, not because we are trained to feel that way, not because someone ordered us, but because something in us. He paused. Refuses to accept that the problem wins, refuses to accept that the tunnel cannot be entered, refuses to accept that the papers on the floor should stay there. He looked at the screen where the footage had played. Mara went into that tunnel with burned hands after 6 months of daily pain, after being told by this very hall that she was not good enough, not strong enough, not useful enough. She went into the dark alone with a bag of tools she packed herself based on a theory nobody else had thought of, and she did not come out until the machine was fixed. He looked back at the hall. That is not weakness. That is not fragility. That is the single most dangerous thing in the known galaxy, a human being who has decided that something needs to be done. Silence. Complete, total silence. Then, from the back of the hall, a single sound, one person clapping, then another, then 3 more, then 10. It spread across the hall slowly at first, then faster, until the sound was everywhere. Cole stood at the podium and did not move. He did not smile. He did not bow. He just let the room be what it was, after the assembly. The hall emptied slowly, groups talking in low voices. Something had shifted in the room today, and everyone could feel it. Mara stood near the back watching people file out. Then she heard footsteps stop beside her. She turned. Vorn. He was taller than her by almost a full meter. His gray face was unreadable as always, his yellow eyes looking down at her. For a long moment, silence. Then Vorn said, "I am told the notes you left with my engineering team are the most complete analysis of the core stabilizer that has ever been written. They say you understood the machine better than anyone who has studied it for years." Mara said nothing. "I also read page 3 of your file," he said. "The full page this time, not just the medical report. I should have read it 6 months ago." Mara looked at him steadily. "Yes," she said. "You should have." Vorn held her gaze. He did not look away. "I was wrong about you," he said. "You were wrong about all of us," Mara said quietly. Vorn was still for a moment. Then he gave a very slow nod. Just once. The way powerful people nod when they accept something that is difficult to accept. He turned and walked away. Mara watched him go. Cole was waiting by the door. He fell into step beside her as she walked out. They walked in silence for a moment. Then Mara said, "You planned this, from the beginning, the unit, the training, Yetha 4. All of it." Cole was quiet for a second. "I planned to be ready," he said. "I could not plan for what the galaxy would need. I could only make sure we would be there when it needed something, and make sure the right people were with us when the moment came." Mara looked at him. "Was I always the right person for Yetha 4? She asked. Cole looked straight ahead. "The tunnels on Yetha 4 were 60 centimeters wide," he said. "I have known about that machine for 2 years. I have known it would fail eventually, and I knew when it did. The only one who could reach the core would have to be small enough to fit in those tunnels, precise enough to work in complete darkness and strong enough in their mind to keep going when their body was screaming to stop." He glanced at her. "So yes," he said. "From the moment I saw you pick up those papers, I knew." Mara walked in silence for a few steps. Then she almost smiled. "You could have just told me that at the beginning," she said. "No," Cole said simply. "You needed to find out for yourself. That is how it works with humans. Nobody can tell you what you are capable of. You have to go into the tunnel and find out." They walked out of the great hall into the open air. The sky above was wide and full of stars, more stars than any human city ever showed you, each one a system, a world, a story. Mara looked up. Her left hand was still burned, still trembling slightly, still not what any council measurement would call strong. But she had gone into the dark tunnel, she had fixed the unfixable machine, she had walked back out, and the galaxy, for the first time, was looking at humans differently, not with boredom, not with dismissal, with something that felt very close to fear.